University Business Council's Armchair Conversation with General Pant, India's National Cybersecurity Coordinator, and Dr. Joe Evans, the U.S. Department of Defense's Technical Director for 5G. My name is Vince Fossey. I'm the Chamber's Executive Director for Cyber Policy and Operations. I want to in particular thank our Indian participants for taking time away from their family on today's holy day and holy weekend. A few operations points just up front. Today's program is on the record, recorded, and any members of the press in attendance that would like to follow up with either speakers or the Chamber should contact the Chamber's press department by emailing press@uschamber.com. Attendees we are asking to keep their cameras off and to please mute yourselves. Our staff will monitor this on the back end. Ample time will be reserved for questions after the opening presentations by Dr. Evans and remarks by General Pant. Please either use the Teams raise your hand function or type your question into the meeting chat. And now let me turn to why we're here today. 5G and next generation wireless broadband networks will enable mobile edge commuting that will safely and securely power the Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, enhanced virtual reality, remote surgery, and numerous other functions. In a few minutes, you will hear Dr. Evans talk about a few ways the DoD is testing ways to run 5G networks that can link numerous connected devices via fiber optic cable or specialized spectrum. We here at the Chamber are excited about the lightning fast speeds and super low latency that 5G networks can and will deliver in the coming years. These will change our lives and commerce as we know it. However, the need for secure, reliable hardware and software and trusted supply chains is an economic, national security, and international security imperative. Jobs, national income, and the security of our highly networked critical infrastructure are at stake. To protect U.S. national security, both the Departments of Defense and Commerce and our Federal Communications Commission prohibit the use of network equipment provided by Huawei, ZTE, and other untrusted or high-risk vendors in the nation's broadband networks. And the U.S. government has embarked on a comprehensive campaign urging our friends and allies to follow a similar path. While the U.S. has spotlighted this security risk, the private sector, in partnership with our public sector partners, has presented solutions. One of these potential solutions to address the national security concerns with high-risk vendors are open, interoperable, and virtualized radio access networks. These may ensure both network integrity, supply chain reliability, while also allowing new startups to enter the marketplace and provide software-defined or cloud-defined network that facilitates communication between the core, RAN, and edge components via open protocols and interfaces. Many of these companies are located in trusted partner countries that do not pose national security risks. Network function virtualization and tools like artificial intelligence and machine learning have the potential to allow for smarter, more efficient network security monitoring, thereby enabling cybersecurity teams to detect and isolate potential incidents at the edge, thereby reducing risks to the core. Global cooperation, like the coordinated and multi-stakeholder Prague principles, is critical to ensuring secure and sustainable commercial and security sector interoperability and block the ability of adversaries to weaponize or exploit insecure networks. A more recent example from a couple of weeks ago was when the leaders of our Quad governments, including the US and India, met virtually and agreed on a path forward to enhance Indo-Pacific cooperation. The Chamber is very pleased to see the formation of a critical and emerging technology working group with a specific focus on the telecommunications deployment, diversification of equipment suppliers, and future telecom, including close cooperation with the private sector and industry writ large. We look forward to contributing to this important dialogue between like-minded countries and hope that this discussion will also include a conversation on open radio access networks. The Chamber has urged governments to take the following actions. promote multi-stakeholder engagement, risk assessment, and risk mitigation, and in particular on the identification of high-risk vendors. Support investments in R&D and direct grants like the USA Telecom Act, which will facilitate both R&D and also a multilateral telecommunications security fund. Uphold a consensus-based, tech-neutral, and international standards deployment beyond the 5G, 3G PPE specifications. Accelerate deployment of these technologies, provide strong intellectual property rights, and help allies see a larger market for trusted vendors. And let me close by saying that this webinar is part of the U.S.-India Business Council's 5G webinar series that kicked off last fall with a conversation with former FCC Chairman Pai. This is the fifth in that series and the first in 2021. Our next one is scheduled for Wednesday, April 21st, where we'll again discuss 5G broadcasting in India and in the US. Our overarching goal in today's conversation and through the series is to promote the US-India tech sector. And there are three tactical objectives. Number one, to create a US-India 5G community of interest. Number two, to provide a platform to support multiple USG 5G initiatives. And number three, to develop a public-facing series of 5G conversations. I'd also like to extend my appreciation to Qualcomm and VMware for their leadership, and in particular to thank General Pant and Dr. Evans' staff for helping to organize this event. I'm very pleased to now turn things over to my colleague, Keith Webster, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's president of our Defense and Aerospace Council. Keith will moderate the conversation going forward, first by introducing our speakers, who will give their opening presentations, and then facilitating the discussion. Keith, over to you, sir.
Vince, thank you so much. And Dr. Pant and Dr. Evans, welcome. It's an honor to be with you here this morning and with our guests. So General Pant is an internationally recognized cybersecurity expert. General Pant leads India's National Cybersecurity Coordinator's Office within the National Security Council Secretariat of India and is the country's highest ranking cybersecurity official. In this capacity, he is responsible for coordinating all activities across multiple sectors to ensure secure and resilient cyber space within the nation. In his role as the NCSC, General Pant oversees the National Cyber Coordination Center and a recently operational cybersecurity and e-surveillance agency. So welcome, Dr. Pant. Dr. Evans is the inaugural technical director for 5G, reporting directly to the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering within the Office of the Secretary of Defense. Dr. Evans is responsible for coordinating 5G efforts across the Department of Defense, oversees and directs the department's 5G to NextG research and development portfolio, and advises the Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering on 5G related topics. Dr. Evans served as a program manager in the DARPA Strategic Technology Office from 2015 to 2019. Dr. Evans, it's a pleasure to have you as well. Dr. Pant, I would like to turn the mic to you for a few remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith, and greetings of the day to all the participants of this very important webinar. Very timely, very relevant, and thanks to the USIBC for having me here. I'm looking forward to the conversation. And someone mentioned about the Holy Weekend. It's not really, a very happy weekend in India this time, because obviously of the pandemic, there are going to be no public parties and etc. But as we go along, we will talk about the Quad and 5G and all these other aspects of cooperation. And there is a lot to talk about. Time is at a premium, so I will wait for the questions. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Pont, General Pont. And Dr. Evans, I know you have a briefing for us, and so I will turn this over to you and the tech team to work through your briefing. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. And so I have a brief overview of what we're doing in 5G in DoD for the audience. I thought that might be a good way to start the conversation. So if we could go to the next slide, slide 2, talks a little bit about the entire 5G initiative within DoD. And so really what we're trying to do is kind of reinvigorate the telecom technology base that we have that is really the foundation of our networked way of war. As you know, 5G is transformational, really looking at things like network sensors, Internet of Things, connected vehicles, all those sorts of things. And that's the same type of technology that our warfighters need. We increasingly rely on drones, things like that, and we need to have a trustworthy foundation for these systems that DoD uses. So in order to do that, we really have two primary objectives. One is to advance our technology and our partner technology 5G capabilities. And we have two thrust areas that focus on that, what we call accelerate and innovate. I'll talk about those in a second. And then we also have as an objective, heightening 5G security. And so we have a thrust area called operate through that's working on that. So the first of these three thrust areas is what we call accelerate. So that's accelerating DoD's use of 5G technology and our expertise with 5G technology through large-scale, at-scale prototyping and experimentation efforts. And you can see examples of those on the right hand of the slide, the first 5 of the bases and experiments where we're performing experimentation on things like smart warehouses, AR, VR for ground training, distributed command and control, things like that. We really view this effort to accelerate 5G as having two parts, and it's two parts of what we call a value chain approach. And one part is focusing on the high end of the value chain, where you have applications, and so where DoD can serve as an anchor tenant for advanced applications. And the analogy I like to draw is for 4G and one of those services and applications, Uber. And so Uber would not have happened without the 5G network there to provide that connectivity between the riders and the drivers and position information and all of that sort of network infrastructure that's needed in order to support that application, that service. We want to find the basically killer apps for DoD in 5G, and we believe many of those are dual use, are also parallel use between what's happening in the commercial world and what's happening in or is useful for DoD. And I think smart warehouse is a wonderful example of one of those dual use applications. At the lower end of the value chain, we're also interested in making sure that we have trustworthy options there, a diverse set of vendors. And so at that end of the value chain, really trying to help commoditize the radio access network and do that through open interfaces and an emphasis on being able to build a more diverse set of suppliers in that part of the 5G ecosystem. The second thrust area that we're looking at is what we call operate through, and that is being able to operate through non-secure networks. And of course, we want to exclude where possible. Why start with an untrustworthy foundation? But we also want to be able to work over untrusted networks so that we can go anywhere that we need to. DoD has that responsibility, and so we want to be able to be secure wherever we're using 5G technology. Then the third thrust area is what we call innovate, and that's basically 6G and beyond, how we work beyond 5G, make sure that we have the right research and development in place in order to make sure that the U.S. and its allies and partners can be successful as we move forward. To give a sense of scale, the first two of those areas, accelerate and operate through in the President's FY21 budget, was 430 million, and innovate about 18 million is what we're working towards. So really a big emphasis on large-scale experimentation and prototyping. And of course, we're trying to reinforce all of these technology and security thrust areas with standards activities, international partnerships as we move forward. So next slide, I won't talk much for the next slide, but the next slide really just says that, slide 3 says we have a 5G, DoD 5G strategy. It has these components, and you can see a lot of what I just talked about in these components of technology, development, security, and then cross-cutting efforts on standards and engagement with industry as well as international allies and partners. Next slide, slide 4, talks a little bit about what we're doing in that accelerate thrust that I mentioned. And in this case, we have 12 projects at again, large number of bases that span the U.S. From Norfolk in the east to Hawaii in the west, and involve a variety of experiments that speak to logistics as well as use in various DoD systems, such as at the tactical edge, in operations centers and that sort of thing, as well as in maritime environment, looking at shipwide and pier-side connectivity. We also have several projects that are looking at how you use augmented reality that is enabled by 5G in a variety of use cases, ranging from combat training to aircraft maintenance and readiness to education, immersive education and training. So really a wide variety of experimentation, and in most of these cases, there's a parallel you can draw between what we're doing in these military use cases and what the commercial world is doing in their realm. So the next slide, next 3 slides really just talk a little bit about some of the projects, where they are, and some of the partners. And I just wanted to give you a sense that we have a broad range of companies participating in these experiments, ranging from large companies. You can see Nokia, Ericsson, AT&T, the large companies, as well as smaller startups, as well as university-affiliated research and development centers. So a wide range of companies. In our first 4 bases, about 516 million over 3 years being invested in those efforts, over 100 total companies involved. Next slide just talks about Nellis Air Force Base, which is selected after the first 4, but is also getting underway already. And that was about $85 million, looking at distributed command and control, how you take air operation centers and distribute them using 5G. The next slide talks a little bit about our upcoming tranche of bases. And these are in solicitation right now. We're in the process of either reviewing white papers or publishing solicitations, that sort of thing. And so, we're hoping for lots of industry interest and involvement in these upcoming experiments as well. Next slide talks a little bit about what each of these base deployments look like, and this is just to give you a little bit of a sense of what's going on at each of the bases. And so, at each of the bases, we stand up a test bed of various with various characteristics that are focused on that particular environment. You might see something different for one that's doing distributed ground training in a wide open environment versus smart warehouse in an enclosed space. So there's differences across the test beds, but basically we're trying to push the edge there in terms of capabilities in the test bed. And certainly there are several challenging RF environments such as shipboard that really push the limits of what you can do with 5G technology. set of applications associated with each of the sites. I talked a little bit about that already. And then we also have what we call network enhancements, which are trying to enhance the basic capability provided by the test bed. So you can think of this as, well, if you want to do 5G application work, you need a network to do that on. So you need to roll out a test bed quickly, and you want that to be relatively low risk. But then you'd also like to push the limits of the 5G technology, and that's what the network enhancement capabilities are doing. That also helps us work with some of the open standards and start looking at things like how you really do approach supply chain risk management and how you implement a framework like that. Next slide talks a little bit about some of the other pieces of the program. I won't go into great depth here other than to say there are multiple solicitations that will be forthcoming, both looking at how you securely operate over 5G networks, as well as how you assess risks in 5G networks. And as I mentioned, looking beyond 5G, how you push the edge of this technology. Next slide talks a bit about engagement and collaboration. I think we'll probably have some question and answer about this upcoming, so I won't spend much time here other than to say, we're certainly investigating multinational collaboration. For example, we've done a couple of events with our NATO colleagues exploring multinational collaboration, and we're also investigating bilateral projects as well, and have started to dip our toe into that realm as well. And of course, obviously, industry. Industry is the foundation of 5G, and so we're collaborating with many industry partners, as I said, in our early experiments. Next slide talks a bit about one of the things that I think is really important for our effort moving forward, as well as the industry moving forward, is this idea of open 5G implementations. And this isn't necessarily open source, that's okay, but really it's more open interfaces is really what we're interested in. So we issued in conjunction with NTIA from the Department of Commerce, issued a notice of inquiry asking for input on the idea of an open 5G challenge, how we might come up with complete 5G implementation, open 5G implementations, complete, mature, and interoperable open 5G implementations. And we're currently working with our colleagues in NTIA to evaluate those. And we believe that really will provide part of this foundation for more trustable 5G. And next slide, I think, is just wrapping up. We think 5G is critically important for the military. We also think we need to be positioned for beyond 5G, for 6G and beyond, and are very excited about working with our international partners and allies on these efforts. And with that, I'll hand it back to Keith.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Evans. As excellent insight into the current state of play. Certainly gives us a lot to think about, and is certainly relevant to the set of questions that are coming up. So, General Pant, if we may, I'd like to start with you. There has been a lot of positive news about the strategic nature of the Quad meeting 2 weeks ago that called for the creation of the Quad Critical and Emerging Technology Working Group. This working group would seek to encourage cooperation on telecommunications deployment, diversification of equipment suppliers, and future telecommunications, including through close cooperation with our private sectors and industry. Convening dialogues on critical technology supply chains as well. While 5G was not mentioned by name in the readout, the topic is clearly part of the discussion. So, General Pant, how is the Quad viewed from India, and what is the role of 5G within this emerging group of partner countries?
Thank you, Keith, and let me first compliment Dr. Evans for an excellent presentation. He's laid the foundation of this evening here, but morning of yours. As far as Quad is concerned, the United States, India, Japan, and Australia are home to 24% of the world's population, 35% of the world's GDP, and many of the world's leading technology and telecom companies. They are not only close, like-minded partners, but we all share a vision of governance that champions democracy and harnesses the power of economic competition. As a result, all of us are uniquely well positioned to forge a common approach to policies surrounding the intersection of technology, security, and the broader economy. Having said that, as you said, on 12th of March, there was a summit meeting, a virtual summit meeting of all our 4 leaders, where basically there were 3 verticals. Obviously, vaccine was one of them, climate was there, but the third one is where you and I come in, and that was the one on new technologies. Let me share with you that post 12th of March, things have moved very fast. I am surprised myself also that the 10 odd groups, 9 or 10 odd working groups that have been formed, 2 of them India is leading, the one on maritime security and education, if I'm not wrong. The US is leading on the new technologies working group. And the initial discussions on that have already started. So it is not a nimble relationship as people thought earlier when it was envisaged that it is a quadrilateral security dialogue focusing on the South China Sea or something. That's how it started off. Now it's much broader, it's much more cemented, and it's much more serious. Having said that, I'm also following up as to what is happening in the US as part of the 100 days program of President Biden. I've also read about Chuck Schumer's Endless Frontiers bill in great detail. In fact, I also read today about the FCC, which has recently launched an inquiry into the current status of the ORAN potential benefits and costs. This was dated 18th March. I know some of you may not have read it, but it's almost a 40-page document. I just glanced through today. So very interesting things are happening, and they're moving very fast. You see that traditional, Quad relationships focused on, as I said, economic part, etc. Today, I think there is lots we can do. I mean, let's take this straight away on the technology front. From the 5G point of view that, let's say, Dr. Even started off, today there is this concept of the Open Radio Access Network. Initially, the 5G standards, as we are aware, the 3GPP standards have all been cornered by those 5 major players, 2 out of which are Chinese. So the only way out for us at the moment is to go in for the Open RAN standards. Now, I've been reading a lot about the Open RAN standards and what Verizon has achieved, etc. in the US. And this is one forum where a lot of collaboration can be done amongst us. Because if you see the countries that are involved, Japan already has a working model. Australia has some strength. India has some strength in majorly in software, etc. And US, of course, has complete spectrum strength, including the hardware. So this is one area where we can really collaborate with each other and take advantage of the strength of the Quad. The second is the supply chain, where again, I wonder if you're aware that as compared to a negative list, which other countries have taken recourse to of banning companies by name and saying that you're in the entity list, etc. India has come out in December last year with what is called the positive list. So what we are saying is that nobody's banned, but the person who can enter has to be a trusted source, and he can only give a trusted product. And what is a trusted source and what is a trusted product? They have made my office as the designated authority to make that list. So from 15th of June this year, that is when this directive will come into effect, any equipment that is connected through the telecom network in India has to be a trusted product, period. And we are presently working on a portal where the telecom service providers will be uploading what equipment they want to connect. And then at the back end, we've got our processes as to what basis do we take it as a trusted source and how we are seeing the trusted product. Also, I will share with you, because in any equipment, there are passive devices and there are active devices. So you have PCBs, you have fans, you have resistors, capacitors, and there is the silicon. So we are only seeing the active programmable chips. So, and I've spoken to all the Intels and the Broadcoms and the Qualcomms and, all the manufacturers and Nokias and the Ericssons. They say that, yes, we have the master BOM, the master bill of material, and we can give you the details of the active programmable semiconductors that are there in the box. So once we got a confirmation from the other side, we said, okay, this is what we will see. And these chips, we are going to see where they're coming from, right? They have to be coming again from the trusted source. And that is what we will term as a trusted product and confirm without hindering the ease of business. So this is another area where within the Quad, if you see the resources that are distributed amongst us, there is a lot of scope for cooperation in the future. You're aware as to your country has recently given 2 major contracts, one to TSMC for almost 12 billion, the Arizona plant, and one to Samsung for another 17 billion. So people are, wanting an onshore capabilities in terms of semiconductors based on, how things have happened in the past. And you don't share a land border with China, we do. And we had a very serious situation last year where they tried to change the status quo. And that is why, things have happened this part of the world. We've changed the foreign direct investment regulations. We've changed our financial GFR, as it is called, regulations. And this directive that I'm speaking of, the trusted source and the national security directive on the telecom sector is a step in that direction. Finally, you see, the entire ecosystem of cybersecurity comprises, or rather starts from the endpoint. So the endpoint could be a mobile, it could be a laptop or your computer. Then you have the network, and then there are these data centers which are also involved, etc. Right? Now the directive that I'm talking of only addresses the network part, because we have got in India licensed telecom service providers. So we are taking advantage of the licensing conditions, and we have inserted this clause in that henceforth every product will be a trusted product. But the endpoint and the data centers, etc., still remain. So how to create trust in these areas is again an area where between the US and India, we can share a lot of notes and tackle that part also. So there is a great scope. I mean, as I said, I've not discussed the ORAN aspects and the ORAN forum. We've had a number of sittings with our US counterparts on that. There is a lot of work required there. But I think you started off by asking me about Quad. I think it's, somehow it's just a blessing in disguise that has come at the right time. I think I'll take up here.
Excellent. Dr. Pant, thank you so much. That's very encouraging. Dr. Evans, the next question for you, please. As the technical director for 5G at the U.S. Department of Defense, you lead the DoD's efforts to promote 5G. When most people think of 5G, they don't really think of military applications. It's that commercial piece, right? So you lead the 5G to Next G program. What are its goals, and what can industry learn from your experience?
Great. Thanks, Keith. I should say, I spoke to some of this in the overview, but I think it's important to emphasize we're both trying to lean forward on the 5G technology and heighten the security. I think DoD has some great interests in this, because as we move forward, I refer to it as telecom as kind of the foundation of our network way of war. What we really need to do is ensure that we have the technology and the security addressed in order to be able to use that technology in military systems. And really, as we move forward to more complex networked military systems, this idea of having a secure supply chain, which includes both the hardware aspects that Dr. Pant was referring to, as well as the software aspects of the 5G software. All of those need to be trustworthy and secure, and DoD needs to buy those types of systems that are coming from the commercial world in order to manage cost if we're going to have these large distributed systems. So it's important for us to be involved in this technology area. In terms of working with industry, I mean, as I said, we have over 100 companies involved in our first tranche of bases, and we really think of it as a collaborative type of thing. It's not so much industry learning from our experience, maybe, as us learning from industry. 5G is really an industry-led technology, and we're a tiny part of the ecosystem. We're really learning from industry in this case.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. As a follow-up, you come from DARPA, and we work closely with the Defense Industrial Base. The first offset strategy in the nuclear environment many years ago. And even the second offset strategy, the technologies, some of which we even enjoy today, were really led by the DARPA and associated research labs in the Defense Industrial Base. And so there was that whole discussion and continued discussion about the third offset strategy and the need to collaborate, DoD and its industries to collaborate in a way with the commercial sector that's unprecedented. And so this is a great example, I think, of a test case. So this follow-up is about the DoD's role in 5G, which again, we really view as a commercial, first and foremost, a commercial, maybe wrongly, and so how is the military uniquely able to innovate, prototype, experiment, and influence and collaborate on this 5G and next G, which will have significant commercial application, but has significant national security implications as well?
So we think that, so first of all, I should probably say we believe that 5G is really a commercial technology and driven by by industry. I think a couple of the numbers I like to cite, the estimated expenditure to deploy 5G in the U.S. alone, capital expenditure of about $350 billion through 2025. An enormous investment. Another number I'd love to cite is one in the past, which was Samsung's R&D budget in 2018, which was $16.7 billion. And there has never been a military networking communications program that big. And so we really do understand that this is a commercial-led ecosystem, I like to call it. And so really what we want to do is serve as both an early adopter and a good partner for experimentation. So we really think we can be a good early adopter by pushing into this new territory of new applications. So a lot of the emphasis on 5G deployments in the U.S. has so far focused on enhanced mobile broadband, basically faster cell phones, faster videos on your cell phone, that sort of thing. We really think that the other aspects, the low latency capabilities as well as massive scale, are really some of the capabilities that we need for DoD applications, and we also think they're really exciting for the commercial world as well. And so try to get that synergy between what we're doing in DoD and what our commercial partners are interested in as future markets for their companies. So. Trying to work together on things like the smart warehouse examples that I gave you earlier, some of the AR, VR types of capabilities, things like that we can really help push forward. We also think that we have some unique opportunities because we're a relatively friendly proving ground for these companies that are working with us. We're expecting these to be experiments. Don't expect them to necessarily work the first time. And so, we're happy to work with these companies as a kind of low risk environment for them to try out some of these new ideas and so hopefully bring these capabilities to market more quickly, which also means we can get them in our systems more quickly. So I think a good partnership is really what we're looking at.
Excellent. So, I think the applications was a critical part there, writing the backbone and the DoD applications and national security applications. Thank you. Another question for you, Dr. Evans, and this is really pulls a bit on General Pant's response to the Quad. As part of your efforts, you work with international partners on 5G technology, and that's critical. What can you share about how we work with allies, and how would we like to work with counterparts in India specifically?
Sure, absolutely. We are very interested in collaborating with partners and allies. We think we have shared 5G security interests in particular. And we want to make sure that we have secure 5G networks, trustworthy and diverse supply chain. All those are very important to us, and we think that has to be worked with partners and allies. I think I've mentioned that 5G we see as industry driven. We also see it as a global technology, and so it's really one of those things where inherently we have to work with our partners and allies on this, and we're looking for vibrant, diverse supply chain of trustworthy telecommunications equipment and suppliers. I think Dr. Pant also mentioned the open RAN and open 5G standards. We think that that's a great place to partner, both on standards, working with some of the open RAN types and open 5G types of organizations. As well as joint collaborative work where we can support some of the early efforts to build those supply chains, build that technology, the software and the hardware that needs to go into that diverse supplier base. So we're very excited by the Quad Summit on March 12th and some of the outcomes from that in terms of the joint technical group work and moving forward with that, and would love to partner on further discussions about how we can turn that into some collaborative activities.
All right, excellent, and thank you, Doctor. General Pant, same question, but from the Indian government perspective, how does the Indian government view this international cooperation, if you will, on 5G technology?
Yeah, I mean, we are looking at it very seriously, and there are, large number of issues that need to be addressed. Firstly, let me tell you where we are in 5G. Maybe then, we can understand that we have 4 major players in the nation. One is government control and 3 are private. The government control is presently still on 3G. So its immediate tender that it is issuing out is to upgrade itself to 4G. So but he's only got about 10% of the market. The balance 90% is shared 30% each with Vodafone, Reliance, and Airtel. And they are the ones who are serious about upgrading to 5G. Our spectrum auctions have not taken place as yet. What is immediately going to happen are the technology demonstration trials. So various use cases have been decided, whether it is education, healthcare, agriculture, etc. And these players will be given areas which will not be connected to the main network. So somebody might get a mall, somebody might get something in the rural areas, and he'll set up his equipment and he will show us the release 15 and 16, the EMBB and the URLLC aspects. That is where the team will go around and confirm that yes, they have the capability for 5G. So this process is going to take the next 1 year, and that is when the auctions will take place and the tenders will come out after that. And the implementation will take about another year. So we have a 2-year period with us for the actual fielding 5G on ground. Now, in this period, we have these options available with us, right? That is when my June 15th policy will kick out, and you'll all come to know as to what is the direction we are taking and what are the trusted products we are going for, etc. So again, coming back to the collaboration part, in semiconductors, we were discussing that in the supply chain, there are both the hardware aspects and the software aspects. And the importance of software aspects, all of us have learned with a very rude shock that we got on the SolarWinds case very recently, that these upgrades also carry this malware. And if you have time and if anyone is interested in the cybersecurity aspect, please read it as a case study as to how smartly it was done and what a deep impact it has had. So both the software aspects as well as the hardware aspects have to be seen. Now, I've been speaking to a lot of these people, and there's a report by McKinsey also on the supply chain aspects. And what they say is that these vendors like Intel and Lenovo, etc., the tier one, they've got about 5,000 suppliers for tier one, 5,000 to 6,000. And tier 1 and 2 are almost 15 to 20,000 suppliers. So keeping a track of the supply chain is not an easy task, mind you. Although the portal that we are making, we're putting a lot of AI, etc. in that. And that is why, as I said earlier, we're only going after the active programmable contents. But supply chain resilience, supply chain security is a subject in itself. And I'm sure when we discuss this aspect again after June this year, when we have set the system in place, we will have a lot to learn with each other and share with each other. And why I'm saying this is because the suppliers are the same. The same suppliers supply the chips to you also and to us also, as of now. So I'm sure you'll find our database also very useful with the sort of research that we've gone into as to, who are the shareholders, who are the ultimate beneficiaries, etc. So the suppliers, etc. And as I said, in the ORAN, there is a lot of work we can divide the various aspects of the CU, the RU, and the DU, the various components of the traditional 5G, and go into details of that. As I said, India has a strength of software, and a lot of these new startups are coming these days. So that is another aspect that we can tackle. And then we also have to see that while we are doing this process, because I'm aware of the technological decoupling that is taking place. I mean, we have to face reality after all, and we are listening to what the US is doing about clean network and clean path and clean submarine cables, etc. So in this sort of a environment, we have to realize that there will be some sort of a backlash also. So how that backlash comes, whether it will be squeezing the rare earths, whether it will be squeezing some of the chips that may not be, being made by some other foundries. So this is another area where within the Quad, and especially within US and India, we can sit down and see how to tackle that part also. So these are the major aspects, where while we are tackling the 5G part, this environment will have to be seen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pant. Dr. Pant, to pull on something you touched on just briefly here in this last response, India's telecom sector is recovering from some financial challenges as a result of the pandemic, as well as hyper competition followed by recent consolidations. So earlier this month, and I think you mentioned this briefly, the government auctioned 4G spectrum and is considering auctioning that 5G spectrum later in the year, maybe this year. What is the Indian government doing to promote 5G deployments in India? And are you working with operators, trusted vendors, and Indian startups to achieve that vision of 5G proliferation in India?
Oh, yes. Firstly, the government has come out with a Startup India policy, where a lot of incentives are being given to startups in terms of tax breaks and less GST collections, that's the general service tax, etc., and land concessions, etc. So startups, definitely a lot of focus is being given. As far as the larger and bigger companies who will eventually be the system integrators for the 5G rollout are concerned, I can name a couple of companies like the Tatas. We have the TCS, the Tata Communication Systems. We have a company called Tech Mahindra, which is also tied up with an American company at the back end, Mavinair, for its software. So these are the ones that are also going to take part in the technology demonstration trials. So it's not only the Nokias and the Siemens. We will have some, this time, for the first time, some Indian companies, including one public sector company called ITI, that is also going to take part in the technology demonstration trials. So both at the SI system integrator end as well as the startup end, the government is giving a lot of incentives. In fact, a lot of times our RFPs, as we call them, requests for proposals, they get the Indian companies get stuck because the Gartner quadrant comes in there as one of the quadrants. So what we've done this time is that we have said, okay, if a company does not have previous experience, then you do a point of a proof of concept. And if you qualify on the proof of concept, then we'll add you in the tender. So the aspect of previous experience also we are overcoming by giving a chance to some new company which feels that has the capability to implement 5G. And we are saying, okay, you do a POC, and after the POC only, we will have some of the contracts. So that is how, let's say, if you want to implement 1,000 sites at the moment, so you say, okay, 50,000 will go to the existing people, the ones who are ready, and the balance 50,000 we'll just keep it to give the other companies a chance, let them do a POC. If they succeed, then we'll include them in the, things like that. So it's happening at all levels. As far as the government is concerned, these incentives are being given. And the time plan I have told you earlier, it's first the technology demonstration trials and then the spectrum auction and the implementation.
Thank you, Dr. Pant. Dr. Evans, similar question. How is the U.S. government incentivizing, if you will, the proliferation of 5G? And then the follow-up to that is, what lessons have we learned in the United States that you would want to share? Your top 2 lessons learned in the United States that you want to share with our colleague in India. Over.
Sure. So certainly, as I said, we're working collaboratively with 5G operators, vendors, startups as part of our initiative. So we're really leaning heavily on U.S. companies, and as I said, there's a lot of progress already in the U.S. in 5G deployment for enhanced broadband. Really, what we're trying to do is help push forward those other aspects of 5G on low latency systems, massive scale, some of the private networks that you might need in a smart warehouse or a factory floor environment. Push forward some of those use cases, provide a good opportunity for U.S. companies to work those new aspects of 5G, while at the same time working with them on these base deployments that look like more traditional cellular networks as opposed to some of these in facility types of networks. So we're working with them both on the broad deployments as well as for capabilities at bases, as well as these more specific use cases as well. So. I think in terms of lessons learned, I think probably the biggest thing is the focus on security. We are just starting to turn our secure supply chain risk management framework into reality. And it sounds like our Indian colleagues are doing well in that area as well. But turning this from a set of policies into real procedures and real databases, as General Pant was saying, that we can then use in analyzing, this is what is going into the network at this particular DoD deployment, and here's where we're going to run into problems. So I think that focus on security and trustworthy suppliers all the way up and down the chain, from the hardware up to the network software to the application software, all of that is important. It only takes one problem there to get you in trouble. So I think that emphasis on security is by far the most important aspect that we're emphasizing. And also, lesson learned is the difficulty in doing that. So yeah, we'd be happy to work collaboratively with our partners.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Evans. So I'm mindful of the time. We have a couple minutes left. We have a representative from Nokia online who I believe has a question for our panel. So could that person please unmute themselves and ask your question? Again, Nokia.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I'm Saurabh Singh. I head Government Affairs and Public Policy for Nokia India. So my question is, in fact, US and India account for two of our largest employee bases for Nokia. And they are also two of our largest R&D centers, led by Bell Labs in the USA. So in this context, I would like to understand, and it would be great for our company to understand, your views, Dr. Evans, Lieutenant General Pant, on the role global telecom majors can play in partnering with the government in promoting 5G and the next G technologies, and the availability of suitable platforms for this. I believe Dr. Evans touched upon it, but if you could just give some more details, would be most helpful.
Yeah, sorry, but yeah, I think.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. I just say that Nokia is actually one of our biggest partners in our Tranche 1 of bases. Literally, I think it was the first award for test bed on our 5G program was to Nokia for the Hill test bed deployment, where we're looking at mid-band spectrum and the interaction between airborne radars and mid-band spectrum, and some of the MIMO, massive MIMO capabilities provided by Nokia systems, key to doing that analysis. So we're definitely interested in partnering with our colleagues. And I just I guess the slight additional point I'd make about this, an additional point would be, we also think it's important to acknowledge trends towards things like open interfaces and O-RAN and things like that. And so we want to work with our partners like Nokia and so the other big players to make sure that these systems are truly interoperable, and that we can have a diverse set of suppliers worldwide.
Sure.
Yeah, let me just add to what Dr. Evans said, that even in India, Nokia has about, if I'm not wrong, 15,000 employees, and I think Saurabh will give that figure. And they are one of the major suppliers. And we look forward to your products, and we are aware of the quality of your products. There's no doubt about that. But let me ask you a counter question, Saurabh, that would you be having any issues of sharing the source code if it is kept in an escrow account?
So that's a very loaded question. And I would say that our position on this has been that it's not just about giving out the source code. There's a lot of strategic and proprietary aspects involved in this. And we believe that a longer and deeper conversation around security as a whole is needed. In fact, it's not just about the source code, that is. And yes, sir, we have met you several times, and we have always had very pleasurable and very deep discussions. So we'll be more than happy to have further discussions on this. Yeah.
Thank you. You answered like a politician.
So you put me on the spot.
Yeah, General Pont, that was a tough question and handled very well by our colleague from Nokia. Look, I am very conscious of time. We're a couple minutes over. We have one more question. Dr. Evans, Dr. Pont, do you have a minute to spare? Okay, great. So our next question is from our colleague from Juniper Networks. I would ask that colleague to unmute themselves and please ask their question. Thank you.
Dr. Evans, good morning. Dr. Pant, good evening. My name is Sampak Garg with Juniper Networks. We're a major provider of high-performance networking solutions, also with facilities in India. And thank you so much for taking time out today to speak with us. Dr. Pant, my question is about the unified license and trusted provider guidance that you had mentioned. And I'm curious if you can provide any more details about that, primarily how you will define what a trusted provider is. Are there certain certifications you'll be looking for? How will a company like Juniper be able to establish that we're trusted? In addition, are there any key deadlines that we should look for before June 15th in terms of when you're issuing this guidance? Any milestones that we should be keeping an eye out for? Thank you.
Yeah, so what we're doing is that we are actually not waiting for June 15th. We are starting our work so that by the time June 15th comes, there's some sort of a preliminary list already there, because already the vendors know, what are the normal buyers from where they buy the equipment. So our beta version of the portal is going up on 15th of April, and we'll start populating it so that when we inaugurate it on 15th June, things are ready. Now, there is a process that it starts with the telecom service provider. He will upload the name of the company from which he wants to buy and the product. Because when we interacted, and I've interacted with your company also and all the others also, they were hesitating that they can share the data with us in the government, but they did not want to share the data with the telecom service provider of the product. So I said, fair enough. So the telecom service providers only tells us what is the model number of that equipment, and then we ask you, and then you tell us, what are the active programmable components in that. Then at the back end, we do our processing. Of course, that is still work in progress as to what are the parameters that we will consider. But there is an element of national interest in it. That is all I can tell you. In addition to what you said about the certifications, etc. And then after that, we put it back on the website that this is the trusted product, and that vendor goes ahead with it. So broadly, that is the process. And as I said, your people have been coming and interacting with us. And anyone here is most welcome to come again and talk to us. We are very open and transparent.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'd like to thank again Dr. Evans and General Pont. It's been an honor to be with you here this morning. Thank you so much. Jay, I know I'm going to turn the mic over to you for closing remarks.
Great, and thank you to Keith as well for superbly moderating this really great and timely conversation. Dr. Evans, I was super pleased to hear you talk about 6G and onward technology as well. Last year, USIBC, we hosted a US-India quantum technology discussion, I believe the first. And the way I opened that session was, we should have been talking about 5G 5 years ago. Let's start talking about quantum now. So in 5 years, we're not behind the curve, so to speak. So thank you for raising that. General Pont, I really want to thank you for your openness and willingness to talk with our members. I know that you have been very gracious with your time on a holiday weekend. Let me wish you and your family well as your entire nation as we go through this very difficult time. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and in a day like Holy and Easter next week, this is the time that we can celebrate with families and look forward to a hopefully changed reality in the months ahead. Lastly, I'd like to thank our partners, our leadership team that makes this happen at USIBC. VMware and Qualcomm and others in the 5G community have really been instrumental in helping us and giving us insight into how this market is developing and how we can support these issues. And I want to thank Vince and his team as well. It's been a real collaboration across the chamber, across the globe to make this happen. And so with that, let me wish everybody good night, a safe weekend, and be well.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Evans, and very moderated Keith. Bye-bye.